I
The
did some more
case
reading.
against Richard Allen, the man that's accused of being the Delphi murderer, we are learning more and more as we inch closer to an actual trial date. One of the most recent things that we learned, more than 60 confessions allegedly from Richard Allen to many people uh, during 22 months in custody. There's a lot to play with here, a lot to examine. Joining me to discuss, Robin Dreeke, retired FBI Special Agent, Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. 60 confessions, but keep in mind, when he was giving those more than 60 confessions, it's reported he was eating paper. He was eating his own feces. Not in a good state, in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, going from living a life with his family, working at CVS, to now this. You're being accused of murdering these two kids, and this is where you're at. Um, I don't know. I mean, how well does something like this hold up? And 60 seems like a inordinate amount of confessions to be making.
It does until you get more of the context. Again, boy, this case is just so all over the place, isn't it, Tony?
Yes.
So here's what we still have. We still have a crime scene that does not look like a single person murder crime scene. And when it comes to the type of murder, so you have the hypothesis here is that you have a white male murdering two female girls. Typically, in those types of situations, they've either been stalked or they're targets of opportunity for a sexual predator.
Hmm.
None of the other telltale signs of stalking or sexual predator are there because they weren't sexually assaulted. So it begs the question that he doesn't quite fit the profile that is typically for that type of murder.
Hmm.
But we have 60 confessions. So let's look at those 60 confessions. And I had to dig deep on this one too.
Yeah.
So going for persuaded false confessions tend to result from long and intense interrogations that may include repeated accusations that the suspect committed the crime, adamant discrediting of the suspect's denials, fabrication of evidence, and eventually an offer to resolve any cognitive dissonance. And it's the continued suffering mentally, emotionally, and physically that it tends to induce those confessions. And I think 22% of those that were false confessions were mentally challenged or in a state of depression, which there's a claim
Hmm.
there that, and 10% did have a diagnosis of mental illness. So, I mean, there's a lot for defense, I think, to play with to discredit those confessions if they go down that road.
Well, I mean, it just you think about it, and you're sitting there, 23 hours a day in a very, very small cell,
Yeah.
um, and you're being taunted by the guards. We've heard reports of that. He wasn't even really allowed to meet with his attorneys very well. It was like literally through the little door. I mean, he was denied a lot of his rights, like without a doubt. At this point,
Yep.
they're finally just now moving him to a jail facility outside of the prison facility. If you're there and you feel like there's really no way out, and I don't know how you would feel there's any way out after a certain amount of time, I think you'd say almost probably anything to get out of that situation. And I do wonder, what was being said to him. What was it? Was he being taunted by some of these guards who have the Odinism patches and all of that on? Just admit it, just say it, and you'll get out. Just tell us,
Mhm.
tell it. I mean, that's conjecture, but that doesn't necessarily constitute a real confession, though, either.
I know. And also, I mean, he knew some facts and details apparently in those confessions that only the killer would know.
Hmm.
But then on other occasions, the confessions contained things that were complete fabrications as
Yeah.
well. This is all over the board. So this is definitely one of those cases where we're going to have to wait to go to see
Yeah.
where the facts lead us in the details
And
because it's really all over.
as an investigator, how do you weigh that when, on one hand, they're saying things that, well, that actually is accurate to the crime scene, and others, it's like that has nothing to do with this. I mean, does one kind of negate the other, where it's almost like we're just, if you're trying to get out of that situation, you're going to throw anything at the wall that sticks. And yes, some of those details may seem to be like they are the killer, but the other half are not at all.
So one of the reasons why it's a great question, Tony. One of the reasons why I'm not jumping on the he's guilty bandwagon with all these confessions is
Hmm.
because it doesn't fit his behavior arc.
Yeah.
not just his behavior arc, but it's not fitting the behavior arc of someone like him. It's not this type of murder. Again, as we were talking before the show started, I consume a lot of information to try to keep informing myself, keep refreshing my memory on all things abnormal psych.
Yeah.
And I just reread John Douglas's book and um, oh, Obsession.
Hmm.
And in Obsession, he really reemphasizes and goes down the horrible dark road of sexual predators, serial rapists, and stalkers, and all the behaviors that those individuals have when they're preying on their victims. And Richard Allen does not have those types of behaviors that are fitting that type of profile. Again, we don't have all the details. We only have it from what we're seeing from social media and what we're seeing being put out there. And a lot of people are under gag orders for this. And so we're not seeing everything. But from what we're seeing, like a stalkers generally so fixate on their individuals that they're going to eventually escalate to the point where they no longer fit that fantasy they have in their lives of that person, and that burst that fantasy, so they resort to violence to overcome that fantasy. A lot of times they're journaling about them, they're fixated on them, and there seems to be no connection between these two girls and Richard Allen beforehand from
Hmm.
anything we're seeing. So the stalker thing is out there. If it's going to be a sexual assault, well, there's no evidence of sexual assault here. And also, he doesn't have a pattern of that behavior either, because usually sexual assault is you don't go from 0 to 100. Zero is like, hey, I'm fine with women, and tomorrow I'm actually going to rape someone and then kill them. There's no arc there that brings him to that. So that's why the confessions that they're alleging he has don't fit any of those behaviors that we're seeing throughout this. And then when you have these, the crime scene itself just doesn't fit a typical murder scene of
Hmm.
one individual killing two girls for apparently no motive. That's what I'm having a hard time with. I don't see a real motive between him killing these girls.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.